Jimmy?
All right, good afternoon, everybody. We got Eric, Josh, and Scott here with Gallagher North America. We have got attendees rolling in as we are now broadcasting. We're going to give it an extra minute or two just to let everyone kind of roll in and funnel in. So bear with us for just an extra couple of minutes. Please also note that we will be actively monitoring the Q&A, and we will be issuing polls. So if anyone is out there, feel free to raise a hand or send through a quick question just to make sure that we're testing that that functionality is up and running. All right, everybody. We are just about to get rolling here. We've got just about most of the attendees. We still see some numbers going up, so people are still joining in here. We'll give a little bit of a preamble before we get completely started up. I just wanted to let everyone know that in spite of the current situation that's evolving here, we are all sort of in the same boat, and we are working from home, maxing out our home internet bandwidth and everything else. So if we end up getting a little bit clunky here, apologies in advance as we're working with the best of everything that we have at our disposal right now. But we're super appreciative that everybody has joined in and is spending lunch with us to go through what we feel to be a pretty important topic, or a number of important topics in the industry today. So quick audio check. Josh, are we good on audio from your standpoint?
Yes, sir. We're good over here.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we're going to go live then, and we're going to kick off. So again, thank you, everybody. A quick reminder, this is being recorded. We are recording the session so that we can capture this content and then redistribute it out to everyone who did attend or might not have had the chance to attend live. But we do appreciate you joining the Gallagher team for our first session in the security webinar style series titled Security in Focus. During this session, we're going to shed some light on some of the most pressing topics across today's access control landscape, and we hope that the insight that we provide is useful and provides a little bit of a window into how the Gallagher team is approaching resolving these challenges, and would look forward to engaging more one-on-one conversations. And with that, we will jump into some introductions. So I am Eric Valletto, Southeast Territory Manager for Gallagher North America. I live in Atlanta, but we cover all of the Southeast from Florida up to Tennessee, and then from the Carolinas the whole way over to Mississippi. And my co-host today, Josh, will give an introduction, and I'll hand it off to him.
Yes, thank you, Eric. Joshua Baskell here. I'm the Business Development Manager covering the South Central and Southwest Territories, from Arkansas, Louisiana, all the way over to Southern California. So as we get started, brief history on Gallagher. So Gallagher has 80 years of experience in agricultural to animal management and perimeter detection and deterrence to access control. And through this, we're able to provide that curb to core concept where basically we're going from the outermost perimeter of the facility all the way to the internal infrastructure, if you will. And by leveraging robust technology, you're able to maximize your investment across all of your critical business systems. We're also able to offer this ultra secure system at an extremely competitive price. So a lot of the themes that we're going to talk about today are very high level. They adhere to some of the most stringent government regulatory compliance requirements in the market today. However, what we're able to do is take that technology we've built into the product for those customers and offer it commercially at a commercially competitive price, a very competitive price. And we're doing that all through a base conventional platform for all applications, from leveraging advanced technology, secure communications, card technology, and then a very expansive base feature set for all of our users. The Security in Focus webinar series is going to build upon each series. As we go through the series, we're going to build upon each concept. So the concept for today is security of security. And the whole concept is that as we finish or wrap this up, we're able to offer solutions to leave the world a safer place is the oversounding theme to what we want to do, is be able to provide those things. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with a brief video that's going to just highlight the concepts that we're going to go into, and then we're going to dive into each of the 4 concepts we've outlined for you today.
Is your security system vulnerable to cyber attack? Cyber threats are one of the top risks for businesses worldwide. They are increasingly common and ever-changing. A cyber breach in your security system has the potential to compromise not only your security, but every aspect of your business. Data loss, disruption to operations, asset damage, and reputation harm are risks you simply can't ignore. Gallaher Security Solutions are engineered to meet the needs of critical sites with some of today's highest security requirements. Robust cybersecurity is built in at every stage. End-to-end encryption and authentication, external and internal vulnerability testing, system hardening and configuration advice, fully trained and certified installers, and a built-in security product development philosophy all help to ensure your security system is as cyber secure as possible. Staying up to date is the best way to protect your business against a cyber breach. Gallaher Solutions are continually evolving to proactively meet the evolving threat of cyber at a software and physical level. Ensure your security system benefits from the innovation, experience, and cutting-edge technology Gallaher provides. Talk to us today.
All right, so we're going to open with a serious topic, but a little bit more of a lighthearted instance of a well-known security vulnerability that exists, and that vulnerability is the 125 kilohertz access badge, or the prox card or prox badge cloning. So in this story, we've got, let's say, Eric and Josh, 2 enterprising young professionals living in a nice apartment downtown, and they come up with this brilliant idea.
Eric, it has been forever and a day since we've thrown a nice rager. I think we should have a party. What do you think?
Totally agree, Josh. Small get-together, 30 or 40 of our closest friends should be right exactly what we need. How are we going to pull this off, though, since we moved to the new place?
You know what? That's a good point, because they have all these rules. We have the neighbors. You know what? We'll just invite the neighbors. Not worried about them. But we have the parking garage. We've got Joe, the security guard, and man, he's a by-the-book guy. I don't know if we can get him on our side. What do you think?
Yeah, the complex has a no more than 10 guest rule. So, I did see this idea, though, online about this card cloner. So if we could use that, it could be the key to our party.
Man, that's awesome. We could take the keys that we currently use to get in the building, make copies of them, sell them. This is an exclusive event, right? Everybody's going to want to be here. So do you have the key or do you not? And then they can come in, they can get into the garage, the car park. We don't have to mess with Joe. They just come right on up and they're ready to go.
Yeah, I got it right here on Amazon. One-click purchase, prime shipping, and $30. You know, I think we need to get this here with time to spare and get some drinks on ice.
I think that sounds like a great idea. When this is over, we're either going to be famous or infamous. Either way, it doesn't matter. I'm ready to party.
Red Solo Cup, I fill you up. Let's have a party. Let's have
So the next video that we have here is going to showcase how easy it is to actually duplicate this card technology and exploit the vulnerability that exists here. It is obviously an outdated technology. Everyone is fairly well aware of this. But the truth of it is there are a lot of properties that are still susceptible to this 125 kilohertz prox card technology. Gallagher offers a migration path for all customers that have it deployed to get away from it. And this particular demonstration really shows the vulnerability in the card technology, not the system technology, but really just the card technology.
When we take this badge here that has not been associated with the system and scan it, you'll notice that access has been denied. To clone the two badges, you just use a handheld card cloning device by reading the information on the badge and writing it to the new badge so that these badges are effectively cloned with no manipulation of the system, only the card technology, so that when you present this badge, contractor badge number 1 has been allowed access.
All right, so today's session is going to include the top 4 vulnerabilities beyond badge cloning, and those include vulnerabilities with sensors and network sensors, communication protocol vulnerabilities, hardware supply chain, and encryption and key management. So we're going to jump right into sensor vulnerabilities. So sensors play an equally critical role in property security, just like every other system component from locks, strikes, keys, cameras, and things of that sort. However, motion sensors and other sensors on the network can be exploited. And the problem with that is that you might not receive an indication that they've been compromised. So these sensor devices rely on UL Class B or similar circuits to monitor voltage on the line to determine their current state, either secure, alarm, masked, tampered, etc. So these circuits are 2-wire circuits that are not encrypted, and they're often unprotected. So by design, the circuits in this class or style can allow a 50% fluctuation in voltage on the line without raising an alarm that tamper has occurred or that there's actually even a problem. It's actually normal operations. So the vulnerability presented here to the sensor network can actually be exploited pretty easily with a few parts from Radio Shack and a 9-volt battery. So this is also not limited to just motion sensors. Any sensor that's deployed on a property to measure temperature, humidity, pressure, voltage, water, anything that a sensor can monitor, any critical system or any operating system would operate and be vulnerable in a similar fashion. So as mentioned, motion sensors typically only communicate when motion is detected, and they're silent the rest of the time. So if someone can actually access the wires, they could tamper with the signal, replicate the voltage, and effectively keep that sensor silent even when motion is detected. So we've got a quick video here showcasing exactly how that happens.
So we have a PIR, we have the system monitoring it, and the system is currently green. We have the attack device. What we can see is I've got 2 LEDs on there and a adjustment device. The idea is that if we tune it such that the LEDs are about equal strength, we will be matching the voltage that's on the line. So that's roughly about there. So at that point we've got the voltage matching what the voltage on the liners, so I can take the sense one off. This lead here is at the same voltage as the liners, so if I connect that onto the line, the sensor is effectively disabled. So if I trigger the sensor, you'll notice that the sensor has now not triggered. So effectively that sensor is disabled, and just to show that the sensor is still working, I'll just disconnect this from the line. So the line is now active again, and when I trigger that, the sensor goes off. So we've successfully attacked the system and disabled the sensors.
So as mentioned, this is scary because, the component of the system is relied upon to be non-communicative unless there's an alarm. And when it's silenced, all kinds of motion or other things that these sensors are supposed to pick up can basically not pass on the information that's critical. And once attacked, there is a clear breach in system integrity and then a lack of visibility over potential intruders or other alarms being raised. And that really allows multiple layers of the physical security architecture to be breached and allowing a potential wrongdoer greater levels of access or even less visibility and oversight into what it is that they're doing on property. So while we don't manufacture sensors, we can provide them with an added layer of security. So for starters, we're going to launch poll number 1, which is a quick question related to sensor networks, either in the installation at your property or any of your customers' properties. But just a quick question here on how you can verify or what degree of certainty you have with verifying your sensors are operable as it stands. So what we're going to do is, as that poll is running, we're going to jump into what Gallagher is doing to actually help protect properties with existing sensor networks and making them more secure.
In a conventional system, the input sensor can be susceptible to attack, potentially rendering high-value assets unprotected. The Gallaher end-of-line module has been designed to fit inside the tamper-proofed housing of a sensor input. It prevents a non-authenticated sensor from communicating unencrypted with the controller. The end-of-line module is just one of many Gallaher security solutions available, providing an uncompromising degree of security for.
So as mentioned, Gallagher has a product called the end-of-line module, and what this is a device that can fit inside the tamper-proof housing of a sensor, and it will fully authenticate and fully encrypt the communication line to that sensor. And it does not rely on voltage protection. So this is applicable or usable to any sensor device or any input that you might deem as critical on property. A lot of secure government facilities, high security sites, financial institution, places that have, or even sections of a property that have lots of intellectual property that needs protecting. This is a device that could really help verify that everything is working appropriately on property. So you've heard the phrase trust but verify, and we believe in that too. And the end-of-line module allows you to trust because it is constantly doing the verification, and it's giving each sensor that it is protecting a heartbeat that is monitored real time, so that if there's any tampering or any problem that arises, the system operator will get notification that there's an issue that they can go more clearly investigate. This helps properties give legacy products new life and added functionality without going to full-on replacement of the unit. So the topic that I will discuss prior to handing off to Josh for the last two is communication protocols. So we're going to start roughly 40 years back, and during the 1980s, you've got a time that was a while ago, but not so different from right now. A top-of-the-line Apple product was pretty popular, and everyone was familiar with the newest iteration of what that was. Mobile phones were hot, and all of these new colors were being released. And then, of course, massive advances in portable music technology including those Walkman Sony headphones and Gallagher Orange no less. But the real fan favorite of the 80s that we are going to be talking about right now is a communication protocol that's still been prevalent after 40 years, which is Wiegand technology. So Wiegand is a legacy technology, and OSDP is an emerging technology. OSDP2 has had some great improvements from the original, but a lot of properties are running Wiegand and a lot of properties are running OSDP. Not so many have been able to convert out to OSDP2. And the problem with Wiegand and the original OSDP is that there are widely published generic keys that are utilized, and they can be easily exploited without alerting the system operator that tamper has existed. So data can be accessed and manipulated to provide unauthorized control of the building, utilizing the one-way communication protocol that Wiegand and Wiegand uses. That makes these communication protocols, and again, this isn't readers, this is the communication protocol that the reader is using to communicate. These are vulnerable to replay attacks and injecting card data. And again, that's because this is an unencrypted and unauthenticated communication. And the challenge that exists here is this limits the maximum system potential, or the total amount of security protection that a system can provide, down to the constraints of the weakest device. So you're limiting the total capacity of the system down to the weakest link on the network. This is so well known that countless papers have been published on the topic. At ISC West, there was a showcase event back in 2016, 4 years ago, showcasing how easily exploitable this vulnerability is. And it's been rebooted in 2020. And when ISC goes off later on this year as planned, you can go to the booth 307 right here between 9:45 and 10:45 and watch the Wiegand protocol get hacked in 60 seconds, exposing that system to major vulnerabilities. So the technology is so widespread and prevalent, almost every installation in the market has some exposure to this, or has over the last couple of years. But partners and customers continue to buy and sell this flawed product, and we hope, our hope is at Gallagher, that unlike some of the other greats from the 80s and before, like Kiss, Aerosmith, Motley Crue, and a lot of the other arena rock bands, that this is actually Wiegand's last final farewell tour, because after 40 years, the people deserve far better than what some of these outdated protocols have to offer. So here's a quick example of one of those papers. So overall, here's what we talked about. Widely published significant vulnerabilities. Wiegand is an unencrypted, binary, one-way communication that's unauthenticated and unsupervised. The reader blindly sends data back to the controller, crosses its fingers, and hopes that the message is received and that the controller takes the appropriate action. By exploiting that vulnerability itself, devices can be used to access and clone all the information passing through a card reader, and then replay that credential, or change it, or lock everybody out. There's really a significant challenge that exists in utilizing this technology on property. So having known, or having heard this, we're going to launch poll number 2. And this is a question just about the communication protocols that you're familiar with, or some of the properties, or what degree of confidence that you have that your communication protocol is secure. So why is this a problem? Well, if you have someone exploiting the system, they're gaining access and basically circumventing the security measures that you put in place. And that could lead to tremendous problems. Cost of a cyber threat, or cost of an incident or an attack in the US a few years back was about $3.6 million. Actually, globally was about $3.6 million. In the US, it was actually double that at about $7.3 million. And what that's saying is, whether someone walks in with nefarious purposes, or gains access to the network, or is exploiting whatever that property holds, that's going to pose a significant challenge, and it's undermining the point of having a security system. So what the Gallagher platform is doing is we're building off of the best that has come out of OSDP and OSDP2. We've taken those best practices, we've built on them, improved them, add some functionality, and we've been doing that in the market for years. So all of our installations, or a majority of them, have been working on more secure platforms. And what we've done is we call that communication protocol HBus. And what it is a high-speed 1 megabit protocol, and it uses RS-485 communication. And instead of being a one-way communication, it's two ways, which means you've got a serialized and supervised device or reader out on the building. And that reader has a monitor heartbeat, and it is end-to-end encrypted and fully authenticated back to the controller. If someone manipulates a reader on our system, it's going to make an alarm on the system. If someone manipulates, typically, a reader using Wiegand protocol, you wouldn't even know that the reader's removed from the outside of your building. Yes, there are some ways that, that there are other protections built in, but traditionally, you'd be running blind. And our system and our HBus communication protocol doesn't allow for that. We have IT-grade authentication and encryption, which prevents data tampering, and it further enhances the security of the system. And we provide regular software updates and releases that can be pushed over the wire directly to the controller and directly to the reader, so that you don't have to run around the property with update cards and scan them at each reader. You can just push everything right over the line, since it's a two-way communication protocol. This was engineered to meet and exceed the requirements of high security and government standards for critical infrastructure, and it has pretty tremendous commercial application where our end users can enjoy all of those same protections for a competitive or a commercially viable price. So really, end users who do leverage this are getting best-in-class technology, and they're enjoying peace of mind that the system is doing what it's intended to do. It has full integrity, and it adds added layers against financial loss, data manipulation, compromised security or life safety, or risk management of the property. And we're offering hardened systems to limit customers' exposure. And our position on it is, if it costs the same price, wouldn't you want more protection? Even better if it costs less, but really trying to leverage the maximum value that your protection system can offer for the amount of dollars that are invested. So that covers the communications protocol. We're going to jump on to the next section where Josh picks up and discusses hardware and supply chain.
All right, thank you, Eric. So when we talk about supply chain, we're defining supply chain as development through deployment. Oh, and Eric, there we go. So development through deployment is what we refer to as the supply chain, and everything in the middle. And so with supply chain, we think about the concept of presumed trust is central to all things security. However, not knowing is not an option. You have no culpability for not knowing what may be there or may not be there. So there is a duty of care that goes along with that aspect. The devices on your network are also, or may be also, subject to tampering, counterfeiting, cloning, and substitution. And those devices that are not authenticated can provide a window for exploitation, or worse, even a physical breach into your system. So utilization of unverified devices or compromised devices could have components or lines of code embedded in them. And that compromise, again, allows them to be able to be accessed or controlled once installed. And we're taking Eric's point of vulnerability and poor communication protocols into account. We look at the bigger picture of what the supply chain implications that we may possibly face. So you don't have to look hard to find cases of supply chain vulnerability in the news, whether it's a manufacturer specifically installing malware or ransomware to somebody exploiting an existing vulnerability, such as the Equifax vulnerability or the DJI drone vulnerability. We all remember the Target breach, and if you look at the investigation, according to that, the hacker was able to compromise the connected billing system of the HVAC company. So here it's a small indescript component of the HVAC that they were able to leverage that, make entry, and then start capturing financial data once they were inside. This is similar to the Home Depot breach that occurred as well shortly after that. Gray market or black market items have some of these vulnerabilities in them. So where you're looking at saving costs and you may be buying components on Amazon or things like that, you start opening yourself up to some of those vulnerabilities just simply by purchasing the product and putting it on the shelf. Or putting it in the customer site. From a federal government perspective, the Department of Interior recently grounded all of its drones due to the concern or lack of confidence that the data was being collected and shared elsewhere, specifically looking at potential spying by the Chinese government. And this is a concern elsewhere, not just the Department of Interior, but they use these drones for, fire control, forest management, things of that nature where they operate, and having to have grounded all of those while they investigate that is a big financial cost to them, and something to be mindful of. So something to think about is if installed devices start granting access, communicating, or exporting information to an unknown offsite entity, you're going to run into significant problems for everybody that's involved. And the resulting disruption to operational continuity, data loss, and damage to reputation has the potential to impact your whole business at every level. And it's a risk that you can't ignore. And it doesn't matter if you're an end user and the risks associated with your site, as much as it could be the reputation of an integrator, as you see here on the slide, if that deployment points back to you, similarly to the HVAC company that manages the target system, and how they're having to work with the Secret Service and the FBI and comply to all that. It really puts them under a very big microscope, and it's nowhere that anyone wants to be. Validating the integrity of a manufacturer's supply chain is difficult. However, relying on a manufacturer that's been adopted by the highest security applications and vetted through stringent government verification process and standards is a significant step in the right direction. And that's one of the big themes to what we're talking about today, is the fact that we're building all of these things and we are applying them in the federal government space, but we're doing it in a way that for those of you in the commercial space, you're able to leverage that in-depth technology and development for your own benefit or your own gain at a commercially viable price, as I mentioned before. Because as an end user, you don't want to open your business up to an unnecessary risk. And I'll say this again, but it doesn't matter what vertical you're in. If you house personnel identifiable information, personal records, financial records, health records, all of those things make you responsible. If you have that data, you are responsible for it. So we're going to go ahead and launch another poll. And when that pops up, you'll see that there, wanting to gauge your confidence in your current supply chain. So what is Gallagher doing about it? Oh, come on now. Number one, most important thing is we own the supply chain. By owning the development and the supply chain, we're able to determine how we want all of our digital signatures and security certificates to work. And by doing that, we're able to build in safeguards to ensure that components are replaced. Components that are replaced and not accounted for in the system aren't able to be used. We use unique serial numbers, and then we have configuration requirements so that you can't just unbolt a sensor and put a new one on it. You have to address the sensor, and you have to know that that is an authentic device that is meant to be on the system and so forth. So the theme here with supply chain is faster, better, stronger. The world of emerging threats in this space is constantly growing. By doing this, we're able to maintain our technology curve to address those emerging changes. Furthermore, we're more able to quickly adapt our software, and we don't have to worry about little trivial things like leap year to create a disruption in our business. The increase in market speed and development is driven by the fact that all of the pieces of our supply chain are interconnected. And this allows for the collaboration between departments to expedite things like delivery, testing, and releasing of new product enhancements, thus optimizing product performance. And it's due in part because of the fact that we don't have third-party product dependencies. All of the component teams are right there and able to work together to ensure the highest standards are being met. Specifically, if you look at the fact that the reader team is next to the team that manages the controller development, is down the hall from the group that writes the firmware and the software, all of those are directly connected to the manufacturing plant and then ultimately the distribution channel. So from inception to deployment, we're able to shrink that amount of time and be able to get things out to the field much faster. So moving from supply chain over to encryption and key management, with the onset of Internet of Things, more and more systems are being interconnected, and the cybersecurity is becoming increasingly more relevant. The greater the interconnectivity, the greater the risk. Obviously, the more devices you put on the network, the more opportunity somebody has to find a way in your system. Think of your home. If you have home security cameras, an alarm panel, a thermostat, all of those things can be vulnerable if you don't have the right security pieces in place. Legacy systems are often prime targets, not just because they control our electricity, natural gas, water, waste treatment, but it's because they were not designed with cybersecurity in mind. Strong authentication, encryption, and key management are important, but often overlooked. And so when we jump into this, we continue the idea of vulnerabilities. Specifically think about the possibility of inaccurate data being injected in your system. What if your GSOC wasn't seeing all of the information or only seeing half of the information? Things like false statuses, similar to what can happen when a sensor is compromised, as Eric identified. What if the keys in your reader were changed, preventing readers from being able, first responders from being able to respond? And while that may be a hypothetical conversation, it is a real threat. When you start diving into low-cost systems, you probably won't find it much in the terms of security, because again, it's the lowest ultimate cost. However, many of those systems are still dependent on outdated symmetric cryptography or extremely complicated and obscure methods of securing their systems. Often in our experience, we come across a case where an alarm was never appropriately addressed, only shunted or disabled, leaving the potential for something to happen. Think in terms of a motion sensor that's not properly dialed in. Maybe it's video motion, and you have a tree outside the window. That thing triggers motion constantly. We don't take the time to go in and block out the tree. We just eventually start ignoring the alarm, and never mind the vehicle that pulled up into the lot, right, or on the lot or through the door, whatever the case may be, because it's the whole concept of the boy who cried wolf. We've just lended a blind eye to it. Or more importantly, we've seen situations where customers have taken door contacts because doors are constantly propped open and just disabling the contact so that it no longer alarms. And that sets them up for a huge liability if something were to happen. And the biggest thing here is to not let your security system become a corporate point of weakness. While we're talking a lot about very deep and heavy standards or concepts, we want to remember that this doesn't just impact the government sector. Often the private sector is a target as well, simply because it's easier. Simply because it's easier to access with fewer repercussions. I can take out a small business, I can capture a little bit of information. They'll lock it down, but they probably won't pursue me. That's the whole idea of that concept. Most places, especially in the small to medium business market, don't have the resources to be able to mitigate that. Any business, large or small, that maintains personal identifying information, as we've discussed before, or any other sensitive information, does have a duty of care to safeguard that information and the people that conduct business there. So thinking in terms of a couple of different concepts, the second note there, loss of situational awareness and control due to legacy symmetrical key policy, has to do with a site overseas where they have multiple field deployments and then a single head end. During a construction project, somebody cut the fiber optic backbone leading from the head end out to the field location. And in doing such, they were able to obviously lose connection. The operator saw that, couldn't figure out why the head end wasn't reporting back or connecting to the field devices. And so what they did is they rebooted the server. The second they rebooted that server, the server generated a new security key. However, that key was not rolled out to the field site. So as soon as that happened, once the fiber was reestablished, the connection was made. None of those sites were able to connect now, not because the physical connection was broken, but because the keys no longer matched and they viewed it as a threat. In order to resolve that situation, the customer had to spend a fortune in standing up security at all of the sites that were now uncontrollable and unsecure, but they also had to pay for manpower to go to each site and manually reset that. And because that was so dependent on the symmetric set of keys, that was the vulnerability. It was an outdated technology that led to further costs in order to mitigate that situation. There's another situation where a large data company had an internal staff member working on some internal penetration testing, and what they did is they found that the same key was used across the system multiple times. They were able, through their pen testing, to identify the key as related to the security system. Once they had that key, they could apply it to doors, access levels, events. So they were able to lock or unlock doors. They were able to change people's access levels just simply by isolating the communication key. The important point to that I want to make is it was the back and forth between the OEM and the end user about who was responsible that really made that situation the headache. And that's leading me into the next point, is specifically this problem is relevant enough that we have what's called an NVD, or a vulnerability database. And what that does is it's a proofing ground, or it's a platform that allows companies or OEMs such as Gallagher to be able to report any of their vulnerabilities, what they've done to fix them, the patchwork, and things like that. It utilizes what we call the CVE testing platform, and that's just the basis for how the tests are conducted and the reporting criteria for the vulnerability. The important point that I want to make here is not all companies report their vulnerabilities. And so if you think about that, it's extremely important as an end user and as an integrator to be better informed about the products that you're selling, the decisions that you're making, and the implications that they may have. And the fact that not all companies report, what else are they not telling you? You know, that's the thing that I want to leave with you is, if I'm not willing to report that, what else am I not really willing to tell you? If you're making a decision about product that you're pulling into your facility, it's important to understand the risk that may be associated with it. Maybe it's a risk that has a workaround, or it has a solution. Great, you can evaluate that, make the decision, move on. Or maybe it's a risk that requires you to make a change on your end outside of the security system just to further harden your network. Either way, having it reported allows you to make a better, more informed decision. So consider this: malicious code being sent across the network with poor encryption. The code that's being sent across can open doors without an access card. Furthermore, if the encryption messages are non-random or hard-coded, it means that the keys can easily be identified, replicated, and commands can be forged, such as asking doors to unlock, or legitimate unlocking commands can be replayed, just as we mentioned before with the large data company. And it can happen, more importantly, without any record of action or traceability, and essentially giving them the true keys to the castle, so they can control what they do and what you see. And that's important. Business continuity can be greatly impacted due to this breach, which can result in a large financial loss, or even worse, a loss of life, property, and things of that nature. A company's duty of care and chain of custody of information illustrates the necessity to protect the people and assets from threats. And a system's integrity is not necessary. The system integrity is necessary specifically to ensure safety of work environments and provide a high level of accountability. By putting the reader on the wall, you're assuming that duty or expectation of care in terms of what those devices are intended to do. So when a person walks in your facility, if they see security cameras and readers and other devices like that, you're essentially unspokenly sending them the message that we have a security system, we're monitoring all these things, and therefore you're opening up yourself to that duty or expectation of care. So keep that in mind. And the other thing that's important to that is, if something happens, usually the cost implications of rectifying or mitigating that situation often, and I'd say almost always, exceed the cost of just putting in the correct system. From an indemnification standpoint, if something happened, was compromised with your current system, what recourse do you have? If you don't have the proper authentication, you have no attribution because there's no integrity. And if you think of that in a court of law, it's like sending an email. Through our internal email system, I know that when Stephanie in New Zealand sends me an email, I know that that came from Stephanie through our server. It is validated, and I can trust the message that I received from that individual. So I think that's very important. We're going to open it up to the last poll, poll number 4. If you'll take a look at that and give us your thoughts. It'll pop up here in just a second. And it's really just how well do you understand your encryption key management process and what safeguards are in place, and just curious to see your comfort level with whatever system you're currently working with today. All right. So as we move on, to close this out, what is Gallagher doing about the current state, or what are we doing about authentication, encryption, and key management? Cyber assurance of physical security system CAPS, international standards. So that's a big deal for us. So we offer 256-bit AES encryption throughout the system, internal and external penetration testing, as well as the product, as we've mentioned before, is designed to meet the stringent highest government standards. I apologize. I don't know why the slide is not advancing. Eric, can you help me out and send me to the next slide? There we go. How important is it that you're assured that the keys you hold are specific to you and not able to be obtained on the market, open market? While cards can be obtained on the open market, I think we've jumped too far. While cards can be obtained on the open market through a number of different channels, you're still in control of your keys. Think in terms of buying a $20 reader on Amazon. The problem with that, while it's cost effective, is that anybody who buys that reader or buys through that source could essentially have the same keys that you have on your site. So with Gallagher, we're giving you the ability to create and deploy your own set of keys so that you know that even though those cards come from the open market, whether you buy them through a wholesaler, whether you buy them through direct to consumer, whatever the case may be, you're putting the keys that you want for your organization on that card. And again, because we adhere to the strictest government standards, we're able to roll these capabilities to all of our customers, not just in the FedGov space. We're not breaking the product into two sets. The core concept of encryption and key management is built into the product. Again, we're doing this, and I'm going to reiterate this, at a fair market value and competitively priced in the commercial space. So it's not a barrier of entry. So if you take anything away from this, it's that with Gallagher, you can trust your data. And then I'm going to say that again. You can trust your data. That's the most important part of what we want to talk about. When it's done right and properly, it's just simple. It works. You plug it in and it does what it's supposed to do. It doesn't require much, if any, part on your end to be able to make that happen. We're able to provide improved compliance with government regulations and corporate policy, thus helping you meet your duty of care. Collectively, you're better equipped to enforce those policies. So as an organization, as you build rules for safety, security, and continuity, you're able to enforce them because you know the data out of your system is correct and true. Improved attribution allows you to have confidence in the message and the source, like we talked about before. Data integrity allows for better financial retribution. So if you are going after a financial loss to try to recover because something has happened, the better your data, the easier it is for you to be able to accomplish that. Again, encryption and key management are considered one of the most important basics for any organization dealing with security and privacy protection. Regardless of your market sector, I guarantee you're held to some regulatory compliance requirement which mandates the use of encryption. Think in terms of student records in the education space, patient information in healthcare, financial information in banking. It doesn't matter what vertical you're in. There may be some aspect of your business that you are required to report, control, secure, and so forth. The challenge for you is to not let the security system become a corporate point of weakness. And again, I'll say this finally, trust your data. So as we conclude the webinar on security of security, I want to propose one more question. And that is, how do you know if your security system is secured? Enter the Security Health Check by Gallagher, and we've got a summary to that. This concludes our webinar series on security. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and we can direct you to the appropriate resource. Also, check us out on the website at security.gallagher.com. And then don't forget, tune in for our next webinar where we explore the concept of core product native solution, where we explore the expanded capabilities available to provide a more complete solution through the Gallagher product, from things like visitor management, locker management to competencies. All of those will be part of that core product, and then from there we'll drill down even deeper. So again, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Please stay healthy and stay tuned. We will see you all soon. And for those of you with questions in the queue, we will be jumping on those as well, so hang tight. If you didn't get something answered, please let us know and we'll make sure we address all of those as well. So thank you.